Okay. Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Mary Preenon. I'm the Director of Communications for HGAR, and I want to welcome everyone to our Breakfast with Benefits. Today, we have a really exciting guest. We have Charlie Spataro, and Charlie is the owner of National Property Inspections, and he's going to talk about the 4 cornerstones of home inspection, what you need to know, what you need to tell your clients, so you can help them make informed decisions. And what we're going to do is hold the questions. Charlie's going to go through his presentation. If you do have questions, if you could please put them in the chat, and then we will, Charlie will answer them afterwards. And without further ado, Charlie, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that introduction. So anyway, here we are, right? The 4 cornerstones of home inspection, which we're actually not going to get to until we get maybe towards the end of this, toward the end of the presentation, but they are important. They are the most important things in a home that we're looking at as home inspectors, and you guys should know what they are and what we're looking for. So, the first thing is that, I'm going to talk about a lot of things pertaining to home inspections, and my hope is that each of you will at least learn one new thing, one valuable thing that can help you with the process going forward. So here we were, planning on having a course that will help you to increase your knowledge of the home inspection process. Learn about the standards of practice for home inspectors, and a little bit about preparing clients for the home inspection, and also stress really how to keep them focused on what's important. One of my goals is always to try to make this process as stress-free as possible. We all know that the home inspection can be a sticking point in a deal, and the whole idea here is that we really want to make this thing stress-free and get through it and not have it affect anything except for the client getting to know a little bit about the house that they're purchasing. So just a little housekeeping, right? What's the objective of the home inspection, right? To protect the home buyer, essentially, right? Home buyer looks at a house, they love it, they want to buy it, but they really don't know the condition of that home in general. Some of the things that they may not be looking at, they're not professionals, they don't know. So this protects them from those surprises. And possibly an expensive repair or something of that nature. The home inspection increases a buyer's confidence in their offer, of course, right? If everything's good with the home inspection, there aren't too many things that would concern somebody. The client is going to be a lot more happy about moving forward with that deal. So, how do we benefit ourselves as real estate professionals? I guess this. In the business, everything is sales, and everything in sales is about relationships, and relationships are built on trust. So, it's my humble opinion, of course, that recommending an inspection to your home buying client is not only helping you develop a relationship with them, but it also has the important added feature of greatly reducing liability for you. In the case of anything that might need to be disclosed about the property's condition. The truth is that the inspection provides a level of disclosure really that can't be possible otherwise. So, I would say that, recommending this level of disclosure helps you to foster trust with the client. So the inspector's goals, right? What are we looking to do? And what's our motivation? And essentially, really what we're looking to do is be unbiased and share information about that home and about that home's components, to report on anything that we may find, good or bad, discuss maintenance, that type of thing, and help the client with moving that sale forward. Now, standards of practice, right? It's a big rule set, right? It's the scope and the limitations of the inspection. And we want to have standards, because if we don't have standards, and we can't have consistency from inspector to inspector, right? They are the minimum required, Of course, some inspectors will go above and beyond. I think most inspectors will go above and beyond the standard minimum required. We might look at things like, for example, a washer and a dryer. You know, we're not technically, you know, required to look at those things, but we may look at them, right? They go along with the sale of the house, and we might take a look and report on those as well. And important here in the state of New York, and for anybody who's actually licensed in New Jersey, to know that the standards of practice are defined by our state of license. So the state actually defines these things, and you could find those standards and things of that nature on the state websites. I have links to those things if anybody's really interested in reading such boring stuff. I can always send it to you if you need it. So, what is an inspection? What is it not? Okay, and so when we look on the right here, not technically exhaustive, right? What does that mean? In the context of a home inspection, that means that an inspector doesn't employ every possible method to uncover a deficiency in a home, right? The inspection is just an observation. It's visual. It's what we can see, right? We use a limited amount of tools and equipment to assist us in that. And, you know, we don't take apart things, right, to look at every single thing inside of them. You know, we might use an advanced technology like a thermal camera to examine a wall that we feel might be having some sort of an issue, but that's not the same as having the full view inside the wall. Another example is, you know, a heat exchanger in a furnace, which is where the heat meets the air and heats the home. That heat exchanger can't be looked at unless you dismantle the entire furnace, right? But if we did something like that, the inspection would not be practical because it would take us days to complete, and it wouldn't be economical. Of course, nobody would be able to afford that type of inspection. So it's important to note that you know, hidden or latent damage, which can't really be seen by the inspector readily, is excluded from the scope of home inspections, and that's according to the standards of practice of New York and New Jersey if you're licensed there. So really quickly, the home inspector should adhere to the standards of practice and the code of ethics and provide a proper report. What they should not do is, for instance, predict the remaining life of a system or a component, right? We could say we think that this thing might be X amount of years old, and we could say that the average life expectancy is such a thing is this many years, but we can't predict how much longer it's going to last in reality, right? We've seen, for example, 20-year heating unit last 50 years. I've seen a 20-year heating unit last 5 years. All depends on how well it's maintained and taken care of. So we do not predict anything. We do not offer advice on any methods on how to fix things, what materials to use, the cost to fix things, unless we're qualified to do so. And those of us who have been around the construction business, and I have as well, there are certain things that we may have certain expertise in pricing wise, but no one inspector or person could have the ability to price out every single repair that needed to be done in a particular home, right? Every different area of the home. We also do not make repairs to a home that we inspect. That is against the rules. We don't refer a specific contractor. I can't say, hey, use John the plumber. I can give, like very much like a real estate agent, I can give a list of qualified plumbers, and the client can choose which plumber they'd like to use. And last but not least, we don't comment on market value for any reason whatsoever, right? So essentially, you know, if the client comes back and says, hey, you know, we don't know if this house is really worth it. Well, that's none of our business. That's your business as the agent. So we don't get involved in that at all. Okay, so inspection protocol. Some of these things are important, and I think we should make sure that we know who's going to attend an inspection, right? And you know, we're going to look at the three: the buyer, the real estate representatives, and the seller. And we'll start with the bottom up. The seller really should not be attending an inspection, and the simple reason is that it's just one of those things that's very uncomfortable, I think, when a seller and a buyer are in the same place together at the same time in a situation like this. it could be very uncomfortable. And I would encourage a seller to either not be there or to, stay out of sight in situations where we're actually there doing the inspection. We may need to ask them a couple of questions to verify a few things, but other than that, the seller really should not be there. Real estate agents on both sides of the sale, I believe it serves you well to at least be there for a part of the inspection. It's just another one of those things that helps to foster trust with your clients and support in the process. Now, the buyer, we always, I don't know about other inspection companies, we always invite the buyer to come along, but very important, we invite them to arrive toward the end of the inspection, because what we don't want is we don't want to take our focus away from what we're doing. During the time of the inspection, we all have our process, and we want to make sure that we go through that process and we don't have interruptions and things that can distract us from what we're trying to do, because we don't want to miss anything. That's our job. But at the end of the inspection, we can focus on the client. We could review the home and the findings, maybe do a quick tour of the home to show them important things like maybe the location of a shutoff for water or electrical panel or a gas main, that kind of thing. And it's also a great opportunity for the client to ask questions face to face, because as we all know, face to face works better, obviously, in understanding sometimes. So that's at least our opinion on who should be at the home inspection. Okay, so educating the home buyer. I think the most important thing about this, and we like to stress this at National Property Inspections, the home inspection should be a positive experience. This should not be, oh God, here comes the home inspection, here comes the home inspector, because essentially it's something that, for many people, for most people, is a necessary thing, and we need to get through the process. So why not get through that process in the best way possible? Home buyers sometimes expect a perfect home, whether it's new construction or existing houses, right? They're often let down when the inspector discovers deficiencies, and especially with first-time home buyers, right? They should be made aware of this. The reality is, the perfect home is rarely going to be perfect. And, I will stress this, we even find deficiencies in brand new homes, and a lot more than you would think, actually. Sometimes I think the newer homes have more problems than the older homes. But, part of what our service should be is to also provide maintenance guide or advise buyers to perform, routine maintenance on a regular basis to keep the property in good condition. I find it helpful to take the time during an inspection review to explain some common maintenance requirements of generally of homes, as well as anything that might be specific to their home, such as cleaning gutters, for example, if we have trees that are nearby. So what are we doing in the end here? We're setting reasonable expectations. That's what we're doing. If we set reasonable expectations, we can take some of the pressure off and make this a little bit more of an enjoyable experience for everybody involved. So real quick, a good inspector is going to explain the scope and limitations of their inspection with the client. We're going to bolster that point that not all homes are perfect, and if issues are discovered, that it's not the end of the world. They can always be corrected and repaired. And then, of course, we should be going over the report with the client and answering any questions that they may have before, during, and after the inspection. For an agent, it's kind of the same thing. Avoid misunderstandings by the client. Educate them about this process. Give them as much information as you can about what might happen during an inspection and what's important. Ask them if they have any questions before the inspection. They've seen the home once, maybe twice, right? Ask them if they have any concerns about the house before the inspector even looks at it. And then, of course, again, after the inspection. I always advise, I know reports can be long and they can be boring. What we try to do is we have a summary section, which is at the top of the inspection. It's the first page and a half or so, in some cases, where all of the items that we feel need attention are right there up at the top of that report. So, really, as an agent, that's the portion that you would be concerned with. Anything that might, affect what the client's thoughts are about the house, that kind of thing, anything that you might want to go ahead and ask for in a deal, that kind of stuff. And then, you know, I always encourage the real estate agent to be clear with the inspector as well. If there are questions that you have that you don't understand, things that you don't understand, please ask the inspector. Get clarity on that. It helps. It'll help you in the moment with your client. It'll also help in the future, because I think that every little thing that you learn going forward helps you to improve and get better each and every time you do it. So, but the most important thing, which you see this sentence at the bottom, encourage clients to maintain perspective, and focus on what's important, right? And you know, we're going to talk about what's important in a few minutes, and I'm going to share all of that with you. But make sure that they're focusing on what's important. Now, preparing a seller is pretty easy, right? Make sure that the home inspection, the inspector has easy access to throughout the property, right? So just, you know, if you have things in front of the electric panel, or you know, there's a few boxes sitting in the doorway of the of the utility room, that kind of stuff, make sure that they clear everything away, right? Make it easy for an inspector to see things. One of the things that happens is if an inspector can't get to something, they will say that they didn't inspect it, and they didn't inspect it because of, you know, whatever that condition may be, and that could be a red flag, right? We don't want red flags right out of the gate, especially on the seller side. We don't want the buyer to believe that there's something that we're hiding, right? You know, they can be there. I always suggest that you be there at the start of an inspection to answer any questions, and then thereafter, as I said before, it's best for them not to be present. So finally, we reach what the 4 cornerstones of home inspection actually are, right? What are the big important things that we need to worry about and focus on with a client should there be a need? So it's important to note all home inspection findings are not of equal importance. The home inspector is going to help sort out any deficiency in terms of safety importance or economic importance, right? How much they're going to cost to fix. And it also helps to put this whole thing in perspective, the inspection findings in perspective. What's important, what's not. You know, we're going to report on minor things, right? And we don't report on minor things, you know, to alarm anybody. We just report on them because that's what we're supposed to do. But we also want to set that focus again. One other note, inspectors consider safety-related deficiencies a priority, right? If there's a gas leak, if there's some other thing that we feel that is an imminent danger to the home, we're gonna have to report that, right? But once again, here we're talking about trying to keep the client's focus away from things that have nothing to do with the inspection. And some of that stuff has to do with like decor, right? Things that shouldn't affect the sale. The client doesn't like the color of the paint in the kitchen, right? It's a valid point for them. It means something to them. But in the process of the home inspection, what we don't want to do is say, okay, we've got this list of deficiencies here, and let's add, by the way, that we don't like the color in the kitchen. Throw the color in the kitchen out. We don't care about the tiles in the bathroom are the wrong shape or any of that kind of stuff. We want to focus right on what's being reported in that home inspection, and we will never report on the color of anything. To be sure of that. So here they are, the 4 cornerstones of home inspection. I'm sure that if I polled everybody before we started, you guys could have come up with this list on your own. Sometimes things are obvious, and sometimes they're not, and that's why we do what we do. And as we're looking at this, you know, we see obviously the roof. Everybody knows the roof is very important. The structural parts of the house are very important. The mechanical parts of the house are very, very important. The plumbing, the electrical, heating systems, that kind of stuff, and the building envelope. And the building envelope actually is fairly involved, and but I will get into you know, a pretty detailed description of what that is in a few minutes here. So what I wanted to show you was an interesting slide that I came across. This is the 10 most common areas that result in liability, right? What does that mean? You know, future issues that might have happened with a house after somebody bought it, right? And if you look here, the 4 cornerstones, which is not an accident, fall pretty much smack dab in the middle of all, at the top of all of this stuff, right? And the one thing you'll notice, that third one down, water intrusion. You're going to find that water intrusion thing is going to be pretty much synonymous in every area and every part of the home. Water can affect everything. Okay. And the other thing we're going to be concerned with is safety issues, but we'll move forward. So the first thing we look at in the four cornerstone being the roof. What are we looking at a roof, right? I mean, obviously we want to make sure that that roof is intact, and we don't want to have any water breaching the roof or at any point at the roof or because of the roof. So we're looking at the age of that roof. We're looking at how many layers of roofing materials might be on the roof, looking at the type of materials and any potential areas of water intrusion, whether that be the flashing around a chimney or valleys in the roof. That's basically the intersection, the inside intersection where two pieces of a roof intersect. And very importantly, and most often not thought of by a lot of people, are gutters and leaders. Gutters and leaders and faulty gutters and leaders, I should say, can cause a lot of problems in a short period of time. And the hardest part for me to understand is it is so easily avoidable and so easy to fix. But gutters and leaders are very, very important. We look at those things very, very carefully to make sure that they are in good repair. The next issue, or the next cornerstone, I should say, would be structural, right? And for the sake of this, we build a house, we start with the foundation. So we'll start there in the basement and the foundation. Water and moisture intrusion in a basement can cause serious damage to the foundation. It can also result in mold and mildew, which we all know today is a big deal. Damaged drywall, other finishes in the interior. The inspector is going to check, right, for cracks in the foundation. He's going to check for, if the walls are plumb and level, if the slab floor is in good condition. If there's a drainage system with a sump pump, we're going to check that guy. We're going to make sure that that's working, right, and that if there were a lot of water, that pump was adequate enough to take that water away from the home the way it should. We also look at things like the condition of a stairway and the structural parts of that. We look at the framing above, right? The floor above you is framed out, and in many cases, especially in an unfinished basement, we can see that, and we're going to look to make sure that everything is okay with that as well. So walls, ceilings, and floors. And this is an interesting part of the inspection, right? Because this is the first floor of a house, the second floor of the house, generally places where we can't really see inside things, right? From an unfinished basement, we can see the framing above us, which is below the floor on the first floor. But we can't see any of this stuff as we look on the first floor of a home where the walls and ceilings are finished. So what are we looking for? We're looking at floors, we're looking at deflection, we're looking at unevenness, we're looking at things that would suggest to us that there might be some sort of an issue in the framing or in the structure below. We're looking at walls, right? We're looking at a bow in a wall or a leaning wall or things like that. Cracking is one thing that comes up in a wall, a sheetrock wall, wallboard wall. Essentially, there are a lot of cracks that are just superficial and they mean nothing. And then there are cracks, that by the pattern, the inspector can deduce that there might be some sort of structural issue, some sort of major movement happening as a result of certain types of cracks. And the same thing in ceilings, right? We're looking for certain types of cracks, any kind of stains, wet spots in the ceiling. A water stain in the ceiling could be a plumbing leak, a roof leak, and that might warrant some further investigation. So the next thing is the attic. And in the attic is an interesting place because we can see a lot of things. In fact, sometimes we don't see the defect in a roofing system until we look into the attic and we actually see a breach of water, right? Or some kind of evidence of a leak that might be happening now, or it might have happened sometime in the past, right? So, and also the next thing we want to look at there is the proper insulation and ventilation of an attic, right? These are key factors in energy efficiency for a home. Deficiencies in insulation and ventilation, it could actually cause leaks, believe it or not, due to ice damming in the winter. it's a very important thing that we look at, especially the ventilation, because we want to make sure that air is flowing through that attic. That may seem odd to some people, but it is the truth. The air is supposed, that cold air and the warm air and everything that happens from the outside goes up into the eaves and comes out of another venting system in the attic, whether it be on the ridge or fans or that kind of stuff, where basically you have a convection system where all the air is just rolling through the attic and not creating hot and cold spots within the attic. And of course, we're also looking at the proper installation of rafters and the sheathing. These things play a big role in your roof's ability to shed water and to maintain enough strength to withstand snow accumulations, for example, in the winter. And of course, we also look at the electrical, any kind of electrical systems up in that attic, as well as any kind of venting in that thing, to make sure that they're terminated properly and everything is working the way it should. So the next of the 4 cornerstones is mechanicals. And mechanicals are going to start with the electric system. You know, most homeowners, I think, take the electrical service for granted. Today, we're using more electricity than ever with all the electronics and the charging and everything else that we're doing. And, you know, surges and spikes and arcs and grounding issues and that kind of stuff are very important to sensitive electronic devices. And we also want to make sure that we're doing a correct safety inspection. You know, an inspector will basically, you know, look at a panel, all the incoming wiring, that kind of stuff. We're going to take that cover off the panel and make sure the wiring is good, make sure everything's been done safely. We will test switches and outlets throughout the home to check for power, correct wiring, all that kind of stuff. You know, I think one of the common misconceptions, we can't test every outlet in the house, right? Or maybe even every switch in the house, because we can't get to it, or we don't know what it controls. Or there's another important thing about maybe to add going backwards for your sellers, to make sure that if they have any blown light bulbs, especially in lights that are single lights operated by one switch, it's very helpful, right? There's not going to be any mystery now as to why this switch isn't working, you know. But essentially, we'll test all that stuff. We're not going to move furniture and that kind of thing to test outlets that are behind furniture and things of that nature. But we do test the majority of what we see and get a great idea of what the electrical system is like and whether it's wired correctly and all that. Next thing is plumbing. I mentioned water earlier, and I think water is the biggest issue we have in a home. It's the #1 concern. All the plumbing and your plumbing fixtures are a significant part of an inspection, because we want to make sure that there are no leaks anywhere, and we also want to make sure that we don't spot a potential leak as well, right? You know, a potential leak when it's solved is much better than a leak that gets solved, right? Because there's always damage associated somehow with water leaking into the home. We're also going to be checking, of course, the drainage systems, right? We're looking for slow or clogged drains. We want to make sure that the overall capacity of the drainage system is sufficient for the home. And, you know, one thing I like to stress too, water heaters, we look at water heaters with a very fine-tooth comb. I'm sure most of the people on this call have had an experience with a water heater, and it always seems that the water heater is replaced after it causes a mess. And what we want to do really is we want to kind of head that off at the pass and do something about a bad water heater before it actually leaks and causes damage. So we look at those things very carefully, and we carefully report on items of that nature. Okay, so heating. You know, basically with the heating, we're going to visually access the condition of the heating equipment, right? We're going to look at everything. A home could be heated by gas, electric, oil, wood. In today's day and age, there's geothermal, there's solar, there's a whole bunch of different new products out there. We're going to inspect the equipment and the associated ductwork. We're going to also determine if the system is adequate sized for the home, and if there is even distribution of heat throughout the home. And as a matter of safety, we're going to look at things where, you know, we're looking for adequate airflow for combustion, right? We want to make sure that there's no condition that could possibly cause carbon monoxide or any kind of natural gas or anything like that to breach the house, the home. The one thing about heating is if you have a furnace, right, we're generally not going to test physically, turn on that system if the temperature is above 65 degrees outside. And this is really mostly because they're combined most of the time with air conditioning systems that use the same blower and ductwork. And it's really not a good idea to quickly switch from one mode to the other without possibly causing damage to one of the systems. In fact, as we move here to air conditioning, I'll tell you also that an air conditioning system should not be tested unless it's been on for 12 hours. We can't get proper readings. You know, we may test a temperature drop, for example, of ingoing and outgoing air to an air conditioning unit, and we can't get the proper test done if that unit has not been operating for a good period of time. So once again, here, if it's not at least 65 degrees outside, we're probably not going to check the air conditioning. I'm sorry, only, I don't know if I'm sure if I said that correctly, but if it's not at least 65 degrees outside, we won't check the air conditioning system, or at least physically turn it on. Another important thing that people don't understand, and sometimes an air conditioning system doesn't work, dirty filters, right? Dirty filters can almost cripple an air conditioning system or a heat system. And those are things that we look at as well. And we're going to make those recommendations every single time to our clients. So here we get now to the building envelope. And the building envelope is a huge thing, okay? And here's the definition, right? The building envelope is defined as the components that provide the separation of the interior and exterior of a building. It facilitates climate control and protects the indoor environment. That's pretty much everything, right? The walls, the roof, the ground on the outside, and what we're looking to prevent here, right, is water transfer into the house, air and heat transfer in or out of the house, depending on the season, and light, which is important in many ways, to have light and to not in certain instances, right? So the first thing we're going to look at in the building envelope is the grading, you know, the landscape outside the home. You know, we've already discussed how important the roof is in keeping out water, but when it rains, you know, where's all this rainwater going to go, right? So what we know is that water runs downhill. So a positive slope around the house on all four sides of the home to keep water from gathering on the foundation and seeping down into that basement is imperative, right? And and if they have a situation where an adequate positive slope is not possible, we're going to be looking for a proper drainage system to move the water away from the foundation. You know, as we know, water is a problem. We've said it over and over. Ongoing water accumulating around the foundation can create what's called hydrostatic pressure, and that pressure against the basement wall can actually cause the wall to move, to crack, to settle in ways that we don't want it to. And it can also result, again, in the growth of mold and mildew and stuff like that. We don't want that to happen. That stuff can get very dicey in today's day and age. So chimneys and skylights, and really anything that kind of comes through the roof, right? Any kind of pipe or chimney or any kind of thing that actually comes through the roofing material. Looks like my camera's going out of focus. There it is. Anyway, there's an old saying in the business: chimneys and skylights are a water leak waiting to happen. And you know, it all starts with the proper installation, which is what we're looking at. We want to make sure that these things were originally installed properly, especially with regard to flashing around these items. With chimneys, we're going to also check the height of the chimney, right? Because it needs to be a certain height above a roof line. It needs to be a certain distance away from a window to avoid toxic fumes getting back into the home. Proper flashing, of course, where it penetrates through the roof. And also the chimney cap at the top, right? We're looking to make sure that that's in good condition as well. That stops water from getting down in the chimney. It also prevents birds and squirrels and other things from entering the home, and we want to make sure that that's not happening. With the skylights, of course, we're most concerned with the proper installation and flashing. So the next thing we'll look at is exterior coverings. There are many different types, right? They can be wood, as they're listed here, vinyl, stucco, brick, stone, synthetic. There's all kinds of things that can serve as the exterior covering. They are all designed to shed water, right? To keep us dry, to keep also to keep air from breaching in one direction or another. Keep that heat in the house in the winter. Keep the heat out of the house in the summer. The trim around the windows and the doors is pretty stuff, right? It can be very decorative, but it also serves a purpose. It covers and seals the gaps between the siding or the exterior covering and the windows and doors. And defects in any of these materials or the installation can cause once again that water intrusion. Here we go again with the water and also heat transfer when we don't want that heat going in one direction or another. We're also looking at windows and doors, right? Windows and doors can be an interesting part of a home, right? They're a lot of times are very much part of the visual appeal to the buyer of the home, but they also are very large openings in the side of the home, and as a result, they account for the majority of air and heat transfer, right? So keeping windows in good repair greatly reduces your energy use and also prevents damage to the interior of the home. And now the last part of the building envelope would be vegetation. And vegetation is important, right? Trees can really look great, and they can provide shade and almost park-like atmospheres sometimes around a home, but they can be very hazardous as well, right? You know, at the low end, leaves. Well, I don't want to say at the low end, right? On one end, the leaves can actually clog gutters, and when gutters get clogged and water spills out over those gutters and gets down into the foundation, we already know the problems that can cause. Any kind of overhanging limbs can damage a roof if they break and fall. It could be devastating to a home. Tree roots can damage driveways. They can damage. I'm sure we've all seen a tree root uproot a driveway or a walkway. We've also seen a tree root from time to time breaching a foundation, pushing a foundation wall. Trees can be very, very strong. And one of the things that we look at, for example, if you had a 50-foot tree, that tree should be at least 25 feet from the house, half the distance of as compared to the height of the tree. And it's important to have that. And it's also, if you have trees that are too close to the home, you can get some pretty bad staining on roofs. And that's not necessarily a functional item, but it can look pretty bad. And it's not attractive. The other thing we want to look at here is also the vegetation other than trees, right? We want to look at the shrubs and the gardens and things that might be around that house. We want to make sure that those things are allowing adequate clearance to, for instance, air conditioning units. Very, very important that they have enough air around them to operate properly. Not having that situation, not having the ideal situation could actually cut the life down of one of these units tremendously. We're also making sure that vegetation isn't covering up things like gas meters and gas mains and electric meters and things of that nature. Those things are also very important. So there you have the building envelope and the fourth cornerstone of home inspection. I wanted to be as brief as I could through the presentation so that we could have a question and answer and session and any open discussion that you guys would like to have. And we'll open up for questions. But before I do, I just want to share my contact information with everybody. I would especially like you to, suggest that you take a look at our website. There's some tools on there for realtors that you guys might find helpful. And I also wanted to have you take a look at our appointment online appointment booking as well. We do that as well, so you don't actually have to speak to anybody to make an appointment. That could be helpful in certain situations. But we also obviously will take a phone call at any time to schedule anything. And also, if you have any questions after this, and I'll say this again down the line, once this session is over, feel free to call me, email me, text me, whatever works best for you. I'm always happy to help anyone in any way that I can. when it comes to any questions about the home inspection process. And that's it. Mary, can you, I think everyone's muted, right?
Yes, I'm just going to go through the chat because some
Yes.
people have quick questions. Someone has asked, one thing I hear a lot is don't use so-and-so, they are a deal killer. Is there a point when the language or details by certain inspectors are too much and it discourages a sale? And how would a realtor deal with this?
Well, that's an interesting thing, right? Because, when I set out to do this as a business, I looked everywhere. And one of the things, I didn't know how I was going to go about it, right? I had all this experience in construction and I knew everything about the home and building, but I didn't know about the home inspection business, right? I didn't know about all this stuff. And National Property Inspections does an amazing job of teaching us that. About how to deal with this type of thing. I mean, look, I always quote something, and you guys might laugh, but I always quote something, and it's a Mr. Miyagi term from the Karate Kid. He says, "Best defense, no be there," right? So if you don't want to get yourself into a situation, if you don't want to have to answer that question, don't ever be in that situation, right? What we like to do, and this is what I do all the time, is I'm 100% aware of the fact that a home inspector's demeanor and activity and actions and in the way that they may write a report or present findings can be detrimental, right, to the process of a sale of a home, And so what we try to do is to be informative, is to be supportive, right? And we also try to not present something in such a way that it scares the daylights out of the home buyer, right? Bottom line is yes, I mean, don't use so-and-so, they're a deal killer. I don't know what to say. I would never badmouth an individual home inspector or anybody for that matter. That's not really my personality or my way. But I know that those people exist out there, and I'm not exactly sure how to deal with it. I think being open and honest with an inspector and having a level-headed conversation and not being angry with them, but a level-headed conversation about what it is that you require. And as long as those things are reasonable, right? If you have a reasonable request, which is, can you please present everything in such a way that that's not scaring the crap out of my client? Let's be a little nicer about what we're doing here, because it's not the inspector's job to go, aha, gotcha, I found this, I found that. That's not what we're supposed to do, right? We're supposed to be consultative. We're supposed to help. So I would say the best way to do it is to be honest with that inspector if you had that situation come up, and try to use them again. And if you don't like what they're doing, there are other people out there that you can choose. And not everybody can be, not everybody can work for you.
Charlie, there's also
Yeah.
someone who's asking about you had mentioned before in the beginning about having the buyer there. So should the buyer be there throughout the whole inspection, or just in the beginning or the end, or what's your feeling about that?
Well, the buyer, like I was saying, I think I said it earlier, but maybe I wasn't clear. We had nobody talking, so I was kind of just rambling about. I invite the buyer to be there, right? But if I start the inspection at 9 o'clock in the morning and I figure I'm going to be done with that inspection at 11:30, I'm going to invite them to show up at 11:15. Be there for the last 45 minutes, because that's kind of when I'm closing things up and when I'm, kind of gathering the bits of details and information. And it's a good time then for us to go through things. We really don't want to have a buyer following us around and asking us questions while we're doing that job, right? Because it's a detail job. We need to make sure that we're going to see everything and we're not going to miss something, and that we're going to do the right job for them. And it's in their best interest, actually, not to have them interrupting us through the whole process. I've had, over my time, I've had every which way. And I can tell you that when somebody's following right behind you and asking you a lot of questions, it not only does it extend the length of the time it takes for us to complete the inspection, but I don't like what happens, as a result of it, in terms of maybe glossing over something that you might have missed. And that's just something that, especially for me personally, I don't want to miss anything. These things are anything that is important enough in a home for me to report is something that we all should be concerned about for ourselves, for our clients, and for our businesses. So that's, I guess that's what I can say about that.
We have another question about you check. I think you had mentioned this. You check for mold.
Do we check for mold?
Yeah.
Well, different inspection companies are, some of them may be licensed, right, to check for mold. In the state of New York, in order for it to test mold, you have to be licensed. And certain home inspectors may be licensed, excuse me, to check, to actually test for mold, right? But I don't personally don't, I personally don't test for mold. I know how to recognize it. I know how to say, okay, you need to have some testing done for mold. But there's an interesting contradiction in the state of New York. You know, as we mentioned earlier, as I do an inspection in somebody's home, I am very well qualified to fix most items that might be deficient in somebody's home, but I can't do it, right? It's against the rules. But for some reason in the state of New York, if you are a mold tester, right? If you're a licensed mold tester, you can also provide the service of remediating that mold. So from my perspective, you know, I don't like the idea of testing for the mold and then charging somebody how many thousands of dollars to remediate it. I don't think it's ethical personally, but that's just me, right? But we do know of, you know, people who are good at that, and you know, we know what to look at. We can't call it exactly what it is. We know that the people who are qualified to test it are, and we would suggest that you bring those people in to test for mold. But it is perfectly okay for a home inspector to test for mold.
There's quite a few questions, Charlie, about the areas that you cover, the counties that you cover, and someone wants to also know how many inspectors you have and how quickly they could schedule an inspection.
Well, I mean, it's really hard to say how quickly we can schedule. It all depends on the time and how busy it is. You know, the whole goal right here is to make sure that we don't ever have a situation where we don't have an inspector available to you. You know, right now there are 2 people here. There's also other national property inspections people in the area. And you know, we can call upon them if we have, and we work with them all the time, right? And we can call upon them when they're not busy to do inspections for us, and in vice versa. We are all trained exactly the same way. We all have the same type of experiences. We all have the same company, National Property Inspections, behind us. So that type of an issue usually doesn't cause a problem. And for us, we are in a growth mode right now. And the minute we become booked, you know, for more than a week, we're looking at adding an inspector. That's the rule of thumb. So we want to be the area's prominent inspection service, and we also want to be able to be available. And we know that that causes a lot of issues.
And what areas do you cover, Charlie?
Well, I am MPI Rockland, right? We can cover pretty much any area in the state of New York. We do have a franchisee in Westchester. But you know, New Jersey, I spoke about New Jersey earlier. We picked the wrong time last year to get involved in trying to get licensed in New Jersey, because the pandemic kind of messed everything up for us. And the state of New Jersey's offices have just been a disaster, and we haven't been able to make that happen. But we will, within a short period of time, we will be licensed in New Jersey as well. And we can do any part of, excuse me?
You can go up to Orange County?
Yes, we could do any county in the state of New York.
Okay. Someone else had put in the chat about can you talk about the removal of an oil tank and how soil is tested after the tank has been removed?
Okay, you know, once again, that is an area of very, very specific expertise, right? So what we're going to do as the home inspector is we're going to identify that there's a tank under the ground, right? There is a test that could be done. It's called a tank sweep, right? Where they could test the integrity of the tank walls and so on and so forth, and determine other testing of the earth around it that can determine whether or not there is any kind of oil or fuel that's leaking from that tank. That is something that generally a home inspector is not qualified to do. So when we see something like that, when we have a suspicion about something like that, we're going to recommend somebody who is qualified and licensed to do such a thing.
And there's one more here. It says, how do you feel about attics insulated with foam? With
foam?
Yeah.
You know, I've seen this on many occasions. It all depends on the application of the foam. right? Where is the foam applied? Most recently, and it's funny that you mentioned this, most recently I saw an attic that was insulated with fiberglass batting, which is the fiberglass you see on the floor of the attic, right? But then the rafters were sprayed all the way uh, all the way to the edge of the rafters. The whole each section in between the rafters was completely filled up with foam insulation, which is entirely wrong, right? Because we don't want the roof to hold in all the heat, right? That whole system is designed to let the heat out, right? That's what we want. We don't want differences in temperature with inside that roof. You don't want to have an immense amount of heat, especially in the summertime, gathering in that roof. And then in the wintertime, when you have the sun beating down, it could be 20 degrees outside, sun beating down on the roof. It could be pretty hot in the roof, right? Up in that attic, excuse me. And if you've got all kinds of insulation on the top and the bottom of that, we don't want any of that. But if I've seen foam insulation that has been done, in place of the fiberglass bat insulation, and I've spoken to insulation people. They do it from time to time, and I don't think that it's a problem. As long as it's done properly, right? As long as that insulation is not clogging up venting systems in that attic, that is allowing the airflow. Because we want, like I said earlier, we want air to flow through that attic.
We have a couple questions here about the costs of inspection. I'm guessing it varies with the size of the house. And then
Yeah.
someone wanted to know about the franchisee in Westchester. If you don't, I mean, Charlie's email is up here. You can always reach out to him or call him about that.
Well, we're going to be, we're going to work together on all that stuff. So,
Okay.
if you want to, email me, call me, whatever, I can certainly pass along information, as I'm sure he does. I'm sure he does that for me as well.
Oh, somebody had a question about well water. If there is well water, do you inspect that?
Well water. Okay, so in a state of, well, I know in Rockland County, and I'm pretty sure all the surrounding counties, maybe not Orange, I think Westchester as well, where in order to sell a home, you have to have the water tested in the well. I believe that's part of the process. If anybody knows this or doesn't know this, please correct me if I'm wrong. But I have asked about this with the counties. I've asked about this with water testing facilities, and they've all told me that in order to sell the home, you have to have the water tested before you even list it, right? So we don't really get involved in a lot of that. From time to time, I will have water tested, but what we do is we bring that water sample to a qualified lab. Okay, we don't do the water testing ourselves, of course. So we're just basically providing that as a service to our clients. As far as the cost, like you said, it's going to vary with the size of the home, the type of the home, right? A freestanding single-family home with a yard of the same square footage, let's say, of a townhouse that has no yard, or a condo, the condo is going to be a little less expensive, and and also depending on the systems and what we're doing, right? If we're doing a radon test, there's an extra charge for that kind of thing. So it does vary a lot. And what I find is that I have inspections that are starting at $325, going all the way up to $800, $900 for these big monstrosity houses that we sometimes see, 4,000 or 5,000 square foot houses.
I just wanted to actually add about the well, because my home, I live in Portland Manor, and I have a well, and before I purchased the home, they did have to do a test of the water in the well. So I think we're done. We've gotten a lot of people, Charlie, that's saying thank you, great presentation. It really was very informative.
Okay, I'm glad, because
a lot. So
oh, good.
And, yeah, and
yeah, I was concerned about that on both ends. I didn't want to jam too much information into one presentation, and I didn't want to not give enough. And I felt like we do these CE classes, right, where they go on for an hour and a half, 2 hours, and they include a ton more information. And all I could say is if anybody is interested in anything in particular, let me know. If you have a question that comes up during the course of a transaction, and you don't really understand it, or you need a piece of advice, of course I can't comment on somebody else's findings. I can't do that. But any general questions about something that you might be stuck on or not understand, I'm glad to help.
Okay. Great. Oh, there was just one more. We have one time for one more question. It
Yes.
says, how often should a septic tank be checked or emptied? I know where I live in the town of Cortland, it's every 3 years, but I guess it varies with municipalities.
Yeah, I mean, look, here's the bottom line. Okay, I'm gonna give you, I'll give you just a window into my life, right? So the heating system in my home is as old as the home. And if you check the manufacturer's specs on that thing, it says it's supposed to last half that time. And I like to believe that it's because, and I know I'm not using the septic tank as an example, but I like to believe that heating system is here still because I've maintained it 100% exactly the way it's supposed to be maintained, right? So whatever that recommended is, I wouldn't bother with the county, right? Who cares what the county thinks, how often you could do it? I would ask a professional, hey, how often should I be doing this, right? And I would say personally, if I had septic system, I would say every 2 years have that thing checked and make sure that it doesn't need to be pumped, and and do what needs to be done as per the prescription of somebody who knows how to do that, right? Let them tell you exactly how to take care of that and maintain it as best you can. That's how you keep systems operating properly, is maintenance. And maintenance is a huge issue among homeowners. Most people have no idea how to maintain their homes and what they need to be doing, and that is a very, very important thing. You can keep a house, in good repair and have systems last way longer than they need to than they're supposed to last if you take care of them.
Great. Okay, well, I think we're just about out of time, but I thank you for all the information. If anyone else does have questions for Charlie, his phone number is up here if you want to jot that down. His email, you can contact him directly, and we will be sending this recording out hopefully like later this afternoon or tomorrow, so you can have it and refer to it. And thank you all for attending. Charlie, great presentation. Thank you so much.
I appreciate it, and I just if you don't mind, I'd like to thank everybody for being here. I wasn't expecting so many people, and it was a great surprise, and I really do appreciate everybody coming by to listen.
Thank you, Charlie. Thank you, Mary.
Bye-bye.
Appreciate useful
Have a great day,
information.
everyone.
Thank you.
You too.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.